Morning, everyone. Welcome to the Friday, February 12th meeting of the Baltimore County delegation. We are on a tight schedule today, so we're going to get right into it. Other members will be joining us as we start. Is it just a little bit of housekeeping? We're going to start with the bill hearings. We may not be able to get the voting as soon as Dr. Williams gets here from the Baltimore County School Board. We're going to go right to him so he can have the last half an hour before we all have to break for our caucus meetings. So starting with that, we have HB 45, Education, Baltimore County Public Library, Collective Bargaining, sponsors Delegate Ford. Delegate Ford, you have the mic.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is HB 45, a bill that would allow employees of the County Public Library System to form employee organizations and engage in collective bargaining. It has a cross-file in the Senate by Senator Heddleman. The library employees we talked to over the summer indicated that they love their work, but they would like better communication between management and workers and more input before decisions are made. They would like more transparency in the hiring and promotion process and more consistent policy enforcement across the branches. Librarians in Montgomery County, Prince George's County, and Howard County already enjoy these rights. And so I think the county administration said it best in their letter that who better to inform management of what improvements to the library than the workers. This bill has the support of the board of the library indicate they support the right of workers for collective bargaining. They have some problems with the bill, and we are working on some amendments, Senator Heddleman and I, that'll be introduced before I ask for your favorable report on this bill. Thank you.
Excellent. We have some folks sign up to testify. Before that, are there any questions for the sponsor from the delegation members? Seeing none, first have Mr. Bernie Merzick, if you're from Cornerstone Government, if you're in.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair.
You have 3 minutes, sir. Go ahead.
I'll be very brief. Mr. Chair, members of delegation, Madam Speaker, Bernie Marzick from Cornerstone Government Affairs here on behalf of Baltimore County Public Library. We also have Sonia Alcantara, Antoine, and Maureen Walsh-David from the library who will speak. We are supportive with amendments, as Delegate Forbes mentioned in her comments. The library does support the right of their employees to collectively bargain, but unfortunately the bill as drafted is unworkable at this point. But as was mentioned, we've met with Senator Heddleman and Delegate Forbes to try to talk through some of the changes that need to be made for some simple things such as Baltimore County Public Library employees are not county employees. They are employees of the library, things along those lines. And we're trying to figure out how it would work with the county as well. So we've made some inquiries into the county to try to get some answers on that. And we are working on creating some amendments. Just as a little bit of background, Sonia began her position just last week as a director and had this bill dropped into her lap. And in fact, the hearing and the appropriations was before she was even in a position. So we're trying to get her fully engaged as she has been. And we would appreciate your assistance with us as we move through this. I will turn it over to Sonia, and you'll also hear from Maureen, who is the chair of the board. And we'd be happy to answer any questions the delegation have, and look forward to working with you all on this bill.
Just as a reminder for folks that have signed up to testify, we've given you 3 minutes, and I will go ahead and pass it to Ms. Sonia, the new director of the Baltimore County Public Library. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Young and Delegate Forbes and members of the delegation. My name is Sonia Alcantara Antoine, and I am the new director of Baltimore County Public Library. I started last Monday, February the 1st. I'm excited because I get to work with a fantastic team of dedicated professionals who serve a vibrant and diverse community in Baltimore County. We've got a lot of smart, capable, and talented people working at Baltimore County Public Library, and I'm committed to engaging with them to make the library be the best that it can be for staff and residents. I was hired in part because I do have a successful track record of working collaboratively with internal and external stakeholders to take a library organization to the next level. So I'm really excited to work with Baltimore County Public Library staff so that we can move the library forward together as one united team. I fully support staff's right to collectively bargain. We have 575 staff members, 302 full-timers and 273 part-timers. Our staff are a critical part of our organization, and we are so grateful for their work. As part of my orientation, I've scheduled a series of tours and virtual meetings with library staff. I haven't been able to meet with everybody just yet, but I'm very eager to do so. I'm interested in learning about what's important to them and where there are opportunities to strengthen the organization. I'm committed to improving conditions for staff now and in the near future. Baltimore County Public Library is a public library system that is governed by the Library Board of Trustees. The Library Board of Trustees determines library policy, rules, regulation, and bylaws for use of the library and the conduct of its business. The majority of our funding does come from Baltimore County, and while we enjoy a collaborative working relationship with the county, it's important to note, as Bernie mentioned before, that the library employees are not employees of the county. They are employees of Baltimore County Public Library. An example of this distinction would be in our benefits. We might offer our employees the same health and dental benefits that the county offers its employees, but the enrollment process is distinct. We have a separate HR department and a separate payroll system that handles and processes enrollment and deductions. So you see there is that distinction. We work collaboratively together, but we are two distinct entities. While much of our funding comes from the county, we do get a lot of support from the state as well. And we are profoundly grateful for the General Assembly's support of public libraries because of the funding and the support that it provides to libraries in Baltimore County Public Library. It's important to note that the overwhelming majority of Baltimore County Public Library employees who are eligible for retirement benefits are actually enrolled in the state's teachers' pension system. Only about 30 of our employees qualify for the county's pension system. So consequently, passage of this bill and a subsequent collective bargaining agreement would pose a cost to Baltimore County Public Library, Baltimore County as our primary funder, and the state too. So again, we do support the right of Baltimore County Public Libraries to collectively bargain. However, the current bill is unworkable for several reasons and requires some amendments and some considerations. There are a number of key omissions that we are eager to work with the delegation on to come up with a solution that works for all parties involved. Thank you for your time today.
Appreciate it. And Ms. Maureen David, Chair of the Baltimore County Public Library Board, you have the mic.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair Young. Good morning, Delegate Forbes. Good morning, all my representatives from the 11th District and all the members of the delegation. I'm Maureen Walsh-David. I'm currently the president of the Baltimore County Public Library Board of Trustees. And as you know, we're committed to the mission and vision of the Baltimore County Public Library to provide opportunities to explore, learn, create, and connect individuals to support a more inclusive and engaged Baltimore County community. And as you can see, we have hired a fantastic director who will take this mission and make our great library system even greater into the future. We understand that our staff is an essential and valued part of our library system and support the right of Baltimore County Public Library employees to seek collective bargaining rights. However, we can only support this bill with amendments that make it fair, workable, and consistent with the laws already considered and passed by the General Assembly. To highlight the most important areas of concern, as you've heard now a few times, Baltimore County employees are not county employees. There are some provisions in this bill that refer to Baltimore County Collective Bargaining Code. If these employees were to be covered by Baltimore County laws, it would require a change in the Baltimore County Code. There is no section on employer rights and authority in the bill, which is needed for clarity and certainty that the library can determine its levels of service and fulfill its public mission. HB 045 does not set out the process for certification and election of a union, and instead, again, references Baltimore County collective bargaining law, which, as you know, does not cover Baltimore County employees. HB 045 relies on a mediator's recommendation for resolving impasse rather than allowing the board to hear all sides and make a determination. There is no decertification process for the union. We have provided suggestions for amendments, such as using as a model legislation that's already been passed by this body for library employees in Howard County, Prince George's County, and also the CCBC classified employees. More time is needed to address our concerns and reach agreement on any amendments. We've had some very productive discussions with the sponsor, with Delegate Forbes and Senator Kellerman on these bills, and we hope to continue to work with them to amend this bill to create a law that is fair, workable, and consistent with prior law. Thank you for your time, and we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, folks. Are there any questions for the panel or for the sponsor? I see Delegate Ruth.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for Delegate Forbes for bringing this bill forward. I think my question was partially answered, which was, can these problems be addressed with amendment? I think it's real. Collective bargaining is incredibly important, but certainly understand your concerns. And Delegate Forbes, I apologize. I was a few minutes late and missed your testimony. I guess the rest of my question is, do you think that this can be worked out in a way that the amendments can address the concerns?
Thank you, Delegate Ruth, for that question. I do think so. I think that the main hurdle of all parties agreeing that collective bargaining is important has been crossed. And I think that there was some misunderstanding about whether, from the union side, whether library employees were Baltimore County employees, but they are not. They are employees of the Baltimore County Public Library System, and that has caused some confusion in the original legislation. So we are working on those amendments, Senator Hedelman and I, and we think that we can find a place where the library is comfortable with the legislation.
Thank you.
Delegate Belcastro.
Delegate Forbes beautifully answered my question. I'm good. Thank you.
Further questions for the sponsor of the panel? I just have one, Mr. Marzek, I just wanted to ask, from the testimony, y'all came a little late to the game here in terms of the bill being moved and everyone being up to date with it from the library. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, came a little bit late to the game in what regard?
In terms of the bill being introduced and then have to catch up with where the bill is and making sure you're advocating for the library board. Is that accurate?
Yes, correct.
Is the sponsor working with you on amendments?
Yes.
Yeah, are the amendments going to change the bill entirely?
No, the purpose would remain the same.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure that the current bill as it is isn't preferable, but it is absolutely workable. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Amendments.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. Just wanted to confirm that. Thank you very much for your testimony. And we will move on to HB 468, also Delegate Forbes, School Board Nomination Commission, Vacancy Procedures. Delegate Forbes, when you're ready.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair and delegation. This is HB 460, a bill that sets procedures for the Baltimore County School Board Nominating Commission to fill single vacancies. As many of you know, before 2018, our school board in Baltimore County was entirely appointed, 11 appointed members by the governor. And beginning in 2018, we began a hybrid school board, 7 elected members corresponding with our existing councilmanic districts, and 4 members that are appointed by the governor. But the governor chooses those 4 members vetted through a nominating commission, and the nominating commission has 19 members, including 1 member from each of our legislative districts and a number of stakeholder organizations across the county, like the League of Women Voters, TABCO, the Baltimore County Chamber of Commerce, and the Baltimore County branch of the NAACP. And by all accounts, the nominating commission process worked very well in selecting our 4 sitting at-large members. They interviewed close to 40 candidates for the positions. They vetted them and they passed 9 names to the governor. And out of the names, he chose our 4 at-large members on the school board. What happened next was the unfortunate and untimely death of Roger Hayden, one of the at-large members, about 10 months into his service. And the school board nominating commission was faced with only the legislation we had passed on to how to replace Mr. Hayden on the board. And it took them about 5 months because the legislation as it was passed requires 3 public meetings in 3 different areas of the county. And to get the nominating commission and school facilities in 3 areas of the county was a huge hurdle for them and took up a lot of time. So this bill, when filling single member vacancies, the nominating commission will only have to hold 1 meeting, but that 1 meeting will be live streamed and it will be archived on the school system website. So candidates that come to the idea of applying later will have the benefit of all the information shared in that meeting. The second thing this bill does, as I told you, the nominating commission passed 9 names to the governor and he chose 4 names. And so there were 5 fully vetted candidates, excellent candidates by all accounts, that the nominating commission approved of, that were lost to the process. When Mr. Hayden passed away and they were looking to fill that vacancy, none of those 5 candidates reapplied. And so in talking with one of them, I asked her whether if she could have her application reactivated, whether she would have said yes to that, and she would have. So this is the part of the bill I call building the bench. Like, we don't want to lose valuable people who want to do this public service. And so this bill would allow the commission to, with the permission of the candidates, reactivate candidates whose names had been passed to the governor for up to 2 years after the original day that they are passed to the governor. And that are the ins and outs of it. You have some testimony from nominating commission members in the folder who would really appreciate these changes. And they are all volunteers, so the more respectful we can be of their time and their efforts, they'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Forbes. And as a reminder to the members too, we have, Barb should have sent out the testimony and you also have access to it in the Google Drive for the delegation. Are there questions for Delegate Forbes related to HB 468? Seeing none, thank you very much. Moving to HB 677, Alcoholic Beverages Board of License Commissioners, Delegate Bhandari, when you're ready.
Yes, good morning, Chair Young, Vice Chair Brooks, and esteemed members of the Baltimore County delegation. I'm here today to present HB 677, Baltimore County Alcoholic Beverages Board of License Commissioner Qualifications. This is a cross-file of legislation put forward by Senator West and something we discussed over the interim. Senator West was hoping to join us this morning, but unfortunately has a meeting of his own. If passed, it would require that each member of the Board of License Commissioner would have to reside in Baltimore County. This is something most other jurisdictions have built into their board's rules and regulation, but as it is, and it is not something required in Baltimore County. This legislation would remedy that. In history, the bill is scheduled to be heard on February 19, 2021, and it was passed out of Senate in 2020, but did not receive a hearing in the House due to the virus. The fiscal note for 2020 stated the bill was not anticipated to materially affect Baltimore County finance or operation. Thank you for your time, and I urge a favorable report on HB 677.
Thank you, Delegate. Questions for the sponsor? Delegate Brooks.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Delegate. Quick question: in the likelihood, if a commissioner is on the board and say moves out of Baltimore County, would he or she have to surrender or resign from the board at that time, or would they be allowed to complete that particular term of appointment?
Okay, I think they should resign. If the whole idea is if they're not staying in the county and they're not paying taxes, why they should be serving on the board.
Okay, they would have been residing in the county when they were first appointed, but in the likelihood they were to move out of the county, say Baltimore County to Baltimore City, or to a different county, here again, would they have to resign their position, or could they just serve?
Yeah, yes. County executives should have to appoint a new one.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Delegate Kramer, question. You're muted.
Oh, sorry about that. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the bill, Delegate Bhandari. So the bill specifies that the applicant must be a registered voter in Baltimore County. Was it your intent to ensure that they weren't a registered voter elsewhere, or that they were actually required to be a voter in Baltimore County?
That was one of the way to identify that they reside in
Delegate
Baltimore.
Bondari.
Yeah, are you listening me okay?
Can't hear you still.
Oh, you can't?
That's okay. I'll connect with you offline.
Sure. Absolutely.
Further questions for the sponsor? Seeing none. Thank you, Delegate Bhandari. Last bill on the bill hearing schedule, HB 822, Baltimore County Board of Education members, publication of contact information, Delegate Grammer. When you're ready, Delegate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay? Okay,
We're good.
fantastic. For the record, Delegate Robin Grammer here to present House Bill 822. It requires the Board of Baltimore County Public School System to publish prominently on its website an email address, a mailing address, and a direct phone number for every member of the Board of Education. I brought this bill a couple years. It didn't get much traction, but considering the last year and the impacts to the public school system, my office has been completely inundated with questions regarding IEPs, transportation, the virtual setup, when students can go back. I sincerely feel that there's still a gap between parents of the school system and the school system itself. So that's why I brought the bill. Things like the hybrid school board, I think there was a lot of reservation beforehand. I think things have gotten better afterwards, and I think things will be better after this is put in place, so people know where to go to figure out who their member is and how to get in touch with them. And with that, I'd be happy to take questions.
Questions for the sponsor, Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So obviously publishing personal information is a concern, particularly in this environment when there are huge, problems with threats and, danger to public officials. I'm just curious, do you know if the education members have official email addresses through the board and official phone numbers that can be published so they're not publishing their personal information?
It's a great question. So they do have email addresses, which are public. They do not have a public phone number. And just to be clear, this would be it would be similar to what we have now. It would be an office mailing address, an office email, and an office phone number. I think the big point that's missing is really the phone number to reach out to their representative directly. And the school system does not provide direct numbers so constituents can call in. What tends to happen, or what the setup is a person can email the board. The board there tells the member to get back to a certain person. So there's a bit of a gap, and frequently, at least in my district, we end up playing the middleman for our Board of Education rep, and that's the gap that I'm trying to bridge here.
Sure, I understand that, but wouldn't that also then be a cost to set up a phone? Phone?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Further questions for the sponsor? Delegate Belcastro.
Delegate Grammer, thanks for bringing the bill forward. I get the intent of the bill is to fill the gap. I think one of the issues is that these are volunteers that work on the board. They're not compensated very much for their efforts. They don't have staff that are able to respond to these emails and inquiries that we often get at our offices. So just me personally, I'm always happy to field those questions and be that middleman, because our school board members are really stretched. And I just wanted to share that comment.
I get that, but I would urge you to keep in mind that, look, this is a representative democracy. These people, for the most part, are elected. And, they have a lot more authority when it comes to things like school construction. I have a school in my district where the school facility is still middle and high school. And, should people who pay the taxes for the system have an opportunity to reach out to their elected officials directly and talk about that? I think the answer to that is yes. And I think it's the most effective way to get people in touch with somewhat the only person who could really answer their questions and advocate for them effectively within the school system.
Thank you.
Delegate Stein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Delegate Grammer, I remember when you brought this a couple of years ago and, our discussions then. So at this point on the board's website, there is a hyperlink to their email. So someone can click on that and email them directly. But I guess you're asking for an address to be prominently listed, I guess the same address for everyone at the Board of Ed. And so an individual phone number for each board member, or could it be just one phone number for everyone, of which messages are taken for them and relayed, or go ahead.
So if you remember last year when we had this discussion, there was some conversation around the last bill, which was slightly different, and it gave the system or the Board of Education, it gave that member the option of what number they wanted to provide. And the way this bill has changed is it cuts that out and it says, we're just going to have the system provide all the representatives a direct phone number, make it nice and simple, just like all of our offices have, like an official Board of Education number, so that you can call your representative directly. And it could even be, leave a message. Rarely is it the case that I have an opportunity to answer my phone directly. And I think if a person can call, leave a message, get a call back, I think that would be sufficient.
Okay. Or what if it was one number and everyone had an extension?
I think that's the same thing, really. Good, because what you're effectively doing is you're providing them an opportunity to leave a message, reach out directly to their Board of Education rep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions for the bill sponsor? Seeing none, we are a little bit ahead of schedule, but not by much. I do not see the superintendent yet. I know that some folks have commitments at 9. I don't want to hold anybody up. We do have 3 bills to vote on. But as soon as the superintendent gets here, we're going to cut right to him so that we all have an opportunity to hear from him and to ask questions in a short period of time. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead. We're going to try and run with HB 555. Delegate Jackson is the chair of the alcohol subcommittee. Is there a report on HB 555? We're going to move into a voting session, by the way, for the folks that are paying attention.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Baltimore County delegation. The alcohol subcommittee, the alcohol beverage subcommittee met with the sponsor of HB 555, the licensee and his counsel, and the concerns of the committee members were addressed. And so the alcoholic beverage subcommittee issued a favorable vote for HB 555.
And is there a motion?
Second, or motion, move.
Second. All right, there's a motion and a second. The move favorable is discussion from the members. Delegate Ebersol.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Chairman Jackson, can you tell me how was the vote unanimous in the subcommittee?
The vote was unanimous in the sense Delegate Butler wasn't able to make it, but everyone else that was there voted for the bill.
Thank you.
Delegate Carden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you guys very much. I'm assuming you can hear me. I'm on my iPad. This is new for me. I wanted to, I spoke with the licensed beverage folks last night about this, and I'm just concerned that we're setting a precedent here. I understand the issues, and I'm inclined to vote in favor, but I'm still really worried that if we do this, it allows chain drugstores, and chain grocery stores to basically set up shelves that can do the same thing and set up, as long as it's an independent actually it can't be a chain drugstore. It has to be an independent drugstore. Set up an independent drugstore and they can have a bar attached to their drugstore. And that concerns me that some of these big pocket chain groceries who are already setting up their systems so that all they have to do if we ever change the law is be able to bring it right in, they're just going to be even more ready. I just concern that because, I mean, and when we spoke to this gentleman, the owner, he was worried about, he had to do 2 salaries, 2 payrolls. And I think that there are ways, if he had talked to an accountant, he could probably figure out ways around this. So it's just, it seems to me that we're helping one person in a very innocuous way, but it is in the out years, it could actually set a bad precedent that we may have to deal with some reversals. So I think, I mean, in the short run, I guess it's okay. So I'm not morally opposed. I'm just worried that we're gonna cause some damage in the out years.
Thank you, Delegate Cardin. I do know that we invited Mr. Jack Milani, and the subcommittee chair also said it'd be helpful to have Mr. Milani here to answer any questions or concerns. If Mr. Milani would like to address some of the concerns that Delegate Cardin had.
We would share the same concerns, because what that would mean is that a chain would rent a independent person and basically lie on the applications, which is always a possibility. We have to trust that the liquor board would see through it. And, you know, again, somebody could falsify an application, but I don't know that we can make another law that says you can't falsify an application to get a license that you're not entitled to. And if we could, I'd be all in favor of it.
Got it. So I see Delegate Shalega had a question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Milani, I thought you were in favor of this.
I am. Absolutely, I am.
All right.
But again, I understand Delegate Cardin's concern, and I appreciate the conversation, because I had the same concerns. And I went to Mr. who was our legal counsel. And then we also checked with Mr. Joyce, and we both legal counsel has advised us that the prohibition is still in there. So, you know, George is a good member who runs a good store. This is not our bill. I'm just here to help him out, because we don't know why the prohibition is in there. And quite honestly, he's an independent just like we are. So, you know, that's why we're supporting him.
Thank you. And wouldn't they, first, like you said, lying on application is illegal to start with. We don't need a law that says you can't lie on your application. But secondly, chains are already excluded. So, you know, while I understand your concerns, I wouldn't over fearful of this. We can always come back next year if you see there's an issue. And I would urge a favorable vote on this.
Delegate Hill.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to ask the subcommittee chair, Delegate Jackson. You said you all had concerns and they were worked out. Could you give us a little detail of what the discussion was about? Because I have similar concerns to what Delegate Cardin expressed.
If I could I pass that to Delegate Brooks for that question as the.
Okay. Delegate Brooks,
Yeah,
sure.
thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah. The concerns initially was, you know, being a Class D versus, you know, operating that in a drugstore. After the meeting that we had with a licensee and counsel, Mr. and also our delegation counsel, Mr. Joyce was there. They assured us that there's legislation that could prevent that. In order for a business to get a license in a situation like that, first of all, it would have to be fit and proper, and they would have to be supported by the community, you know. So a John Doe and then also a license would have to be available. There are some safeguards there, and like Delegate Shalega said, if this situation presents itself in a negative way, we can always come back and address it next time. So, yeah.
May I follow up, Mr. Chairman?
quickly, please.
Okay, Delegate Brooks, with your accounting background, I mean, my understanding from the, Mr. Brown, was that the real issue is that there's some accounting issue because he's got two businesses in the same space. And I would have thought there are ways, I mean, I've got two businesses in the same space too. I just did two separate tax returns. So can you explain to me why this is what we need to do to make his life easier and sort of address that issue?
Well, you know, it's just a choice, you know, two different entities. If he wanted to merge them into one, you know, I mean, what I was looking at primarily was the fact that we were looking at a Class D, which was a bar, and then you're going to be coming into the situation we also trying to merge it into a Class B, you know. But I think the people in the community, they wanted it. They had no problem with it. So I just didn't see why we should, you know, not allow that, because that is one of the things.
Yes.
When you're allowing or granting a license, that whatever input you get from the community does weigh a lot.
That's who the bill's for.
All right, thank you.
So there's been a motion and a second. We've had discussion. I know we have the superintendent waiting. What we've done in I think we've done for other committees, we'll do a voice vote, but if there is any opposition of folks that want to be recorded in the red, then we'll record them separately. So I'm going to do a voice vote, and anyone that wants to be recorded in the red, raise their hand, and I will call them out. And if I miss anyone, or just let me know if I miss someone, I will record them in the red. Is that?
Chairman,
I
want to be recorded not voting.
Mr. Chairman.
Understood.
I want to be recorded not voting.
Stand by.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir. Council.
There's a technical.
Stand by, Nino.
I apologize. There's a technical amendment to the bill. I don't think.
There is an amendment? Okay, all right. If there's an amendment to the bill that wasn't.
Yeah.
There was an amendment to the bill that was not brought up?
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, brought up.
All right. Delegate Long, I believe you made the motion. I need you to, if you wouldn't mind, if you could please take back your motion on the favorable motion on the bill.
Delegate Young, we actually heard the amendment and all it does is change one word.
Understood, Delegate Long, but that's not we need to move on we would need to move on the amendments first and then move the bill. So if you would please remove your motion.
Yeah. I'll remove my motion.
Withdraw, you said.
Yeah. Withdraw. And unfortunately, because of in the interest of time, I'll be calling another delegation meeting next week to vote on the three bills that we had, and we will bring the bill up as amended with the amendment and vote on the bill as amended. Thank you for the opportunity to bring the bill up. At the moment, we will vote on all three of them next week, earlier in the week, so we can move through with business into the other committees. Thank you, Council Joyce, for bringing that to my attention. With that, I know that we're moving out of a voting session. We'll be going to hear from Dr. Williams from Baltimore County Public Schools to give us an update on how they're doing. Dr. Williams, welcome.
Bob is got to be delivered. They didn't tell about the amendment.
Mute your Zoom, Rick.
If everybody could make sure they keep their mics muted until asked to be recognized. Thank you. Dr. Williams, you have the mic.
Bob has got to be delivered.
So good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for this invitation to speak to you this morning. It was about a year ago that we were able to meet in person, and at that time, previous Chairwoman Causey joined me. This year, I'm pleased to share that Chairwoman Scott has joined me or is planning to join me today. I want to thank the Chair of the Delegate, Pat Young, Vice Chair Delegate Ben Brooks, and I see our Speaker of the House, Jones, is present, and to the rest of the delegates, thank you for this invitation. I bring you greetings from the staff and students at Baltimore County Public Schools. This is my second year as superintendent, and these past 2 years have been extremely challenging, but I am so appreciative of the staff, our students, parents, and communities for their work to continue to work and support our schools through these difficult times. I've received some topics and questions from the delegation. I've incorporated my responses to those questions in today's message. First and foremost, we're all about instruction. My focus has been on improving student achievement. And last year, we were able to update our strategic plan called the Compass, our pathway to excellence. As stated in the Compass, we embrace the challenges set forth by the pandemic, and we celebrate the diversity of our students. To this end, we've created the Compass with an awareness of the students and families we serve, as well as the supports each student deserves. This is what we mean by equity, meeting individual student needs, which requires teamwork among both schools and offices. Our collective efforts now to prioritize high quality teaching and appropriate supports in every classroom, promote positive school climate and morale, and properly staffed schools will close our achievement gaps. So beginning this current school year, I've created what we call system improvement teams as one way to have ongoing discussion, analysis, and change in practices at the central office level and at the school level. A system improvement team will be comprised of both school-based and central office staff who analyze our available data, observe trends for both quantitative and qualitative data points, frame the current state, identify questions to investigate, identify specific measurable objectives, have access to resources and supports, and develop a communication plan to share findings, recommendations to practices, interventions, and next steps. The 11 system improvement teams are focusing on the following, which are paramount: reading, mathematics, specifically Algebra 1, GT honors, AP, and IB, additional national assessments such as PSAT, SAT, ACT, and AccuPlacer, ineligibility, college and career readiness, focusing on 2 parts, graduation and CTE, suspensions, staffing, family engagement, and fiduciary responsibilities. So our staff is excited about this collaboration and work to help us improve outcomes for students. I am pleased that during our spring virtual learning, our local schools design engagement activities for students who were not participating in virtual learning. And many of these activities continue during the summer, along with our robust summer programs. At the start of the school year, and currently we're monitoring our students' engagement and attendance. There is teacher level responses that may lead to a school-based level response. If additional support is necessary, that will lead to our pupil personnel level work response, which may include invitation to other internal, external personnel as appropriate to support students and families, documentation of efforts, and support students and families through home visits and connections with points of contact in other agencies. A lot of questions about counseling. We have always provided support to students, but more so during the pandemic. We provide social emotional learning plans, including mindfulness awareness activities, conscious discipline, and whether it's virtual or when we can, face-to-face environments, restorative practices, and resources. Our school counseling departments continue to provide lessons, including individual and group counseling, parent consultations, and resource referrals regarding the 6-year plan meetings, our 5th grade interest interviews, parent workshops, behavior threat assessment team support, and crisis response. And specifically around our college counseling support, this year we had our HBCU virtual college fair in November, classroom lessons to review graduation requirements, post-secondary supports, and the college application process, FAFSA process and support, and CCBC instant admission days. There was interest around our grants. BCPS have received several grants under the Education Stabilization Funds and 2 grants under the Coronavirus Relief Fund. So we're using these grants for the following: food and nutrition services, including food, supplies, salaries, and benefits. I'll provide some more information regarding that. Technology, including new and replacement devices and software. Curriculum and instruction, including curriculum development, hotspots for students in Title I schools. student health services, supplies and materials, building maintenance, including the reconfiguration of health suites, access points, lavatories, and traffic flow, sanitizing buildings, and installing hand washing stations. Chromebooks for our paraeducators, replacing devices for K-12 students for a 1-to-1 student device ratio, and again, additional hotspots, software, and software licenses. We provided professional development to our staff, tutoring grants, online instructional interventions, curriculum development. And our Department of Instructional Technology has distributed 57,534 devices for K-12, which includes about 27,000 between August 1st and September 25th. I want to go back to our meals. Our highlight to the opening of this year has been the way in which we are providing meals to our students. All of our students ages 2 through 18 or with disabilities receive free meals. These meals are provided curbside at main entrance of every high school and middle school, in addition to more than 260 locations in the communities for our elementary students. The partnership between the Offices of Transportation and Food and Nutrition has allowed us to continue meal service for free to all our students in this virtual environment. To this date, since March of 2020, we have provided over 1.9 million free meals for students. Another topic that was very interesting that we have been dealing with, which is unique to any other system, we are in the repair, review, recovery phase of our cyber attack. And this process, of course, is still ongoing. So since the cyber attack on November 24th, the school system has begun the arduous task of reestablishing the Enterprise Resource Planning System, our ERP. Full restoration of our ERP system is anticipated to take several months. So from December 4th of 2020 through January 15th of 2021, employees were issued net paychecks based on their most recent prior paycheck. This was accomplished with the great support of our Baltimore County government and M&T Bank. On January 22nd of 2021, the first paycheck issue from the partially restored payroll system was issued. Temporary data entry methods are in place until direct data entry is restored. The automated timekeeping system for hourly employees are also disabled by the attack, and manual data entry is in place until the timekeeping system can be restored or replaced. So we are working to recreate and mail our W-2 statements to employees on or before March 2nd, restore historical data such as leave balances, updating employee benefit data for the 2020 open enrollment, and reconciling variances between net paychecks issued in December and January. Updates have been provided to staff, and our board leadership is working with vendors and experts and are brief about next steps and conclusions. So our experts in these fields and other investigators that we are working with will continue to brief us on additional information. We will have additional meetings with the board and can provide updates to you, our elected officials, and our community. I'm pleased to inform all of you that the third-party experts with whom we have been working with have confirmed there's been no evidence that any data was accessed or stolen. The next topic is about reopening plans. Yes, we have our plan, and as of today, we're still focusing on bringing back small groups of students. During the week of March 1st, we will begin a hybrid learning for 2 groups, students in our 4 public separate day schools and students in our preschool through grade 2. These are the same 2 groups that we had planned to return to hybrid learning in November and December of 2020. 2 weeks later, during the week of March 15th, students in grades 3 through 12 with special needs served outside of general education, and selected career and technical education students are planning to return for in-person learning. And then a week later, during the week of March 22nd, the remaining students in grades 6 and 9 may return for hybrid learning. We do have spring break coming up beginning March 29th through Monday, April 5th. So after spring break, the remaining students in grades 3 through 5, 7 through 8, and 10 through 12 may return for hybrid learning during the week of April 6th. The first phase of our BCPS reopening plan will have students wishing to return, which is our phase 4, our last phase, on April 6th. However, a process has been shared with the community to allow parents and guardians who initially chooses to remain in a virtual environment to contact their school and request a return to hybrid instruction at any point through the last day of school.
So apologies, working on a tight schedule, and normally I would allow you to continue. I appreciate the information. I'd like to, if you're okay with it, move to some questions from the members because we only have about 10 minutes left. Is that okay?
Sure, thank you.
No worries, sir. Sorry. Delegate Ruth.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Superintendent Williams, for providing this update. Really appreciate your coming out and sharing the information with us. Thank you for the update on the cyber attack, and you know, for the timeline of what's been accomplished and where you're going with that. And you mentioned working with third-party experts, but I didn't hear you mention anything about federal or local law enforcement. Are you, unless I missed it, are you working with law enforcement as well on investigating that?
Yes, so we are insured through MABE, and their work is with those experts, FBI experts, vendor experts, to review what has happened and provide next steps in working with our IT. The board has been involved, and once they are briefed about findings and next steps, we can provide some updates regarding kind of a timeline. Right now, what we're doing is focusing on those applications in our schools and in our offices to try to restore, to keep us going as a system. But in terms of the specifics, we'll be happy to share a little bit more concrete information through the leadership of the board.
I appreciate that, but I'm sorry I wasn't clear. You are or you aren't meeting with the FBI at this time?
Because of the insurance company, we work with vendors and they work with the experts, which include FBI, folks in IT, folks who've done this work when it comes to a cyber attack.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Eversole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the governor chose to ignore the metrics that we set up before for positivity and sort of demanded that schools reopen in some form on March 1st. Not all teachers are vaccinated. So I want to know if you'll honor the health concerns for comorbidities and family comorbidities of staff members, if they would prefer not to come back and teach in person by offering them virtual places to teach. And will there be retribution by the county if someone to come back and teach, they say for their health concerns, they really have to determine that they can't come. In other words, if they put their health in front of their job, will their job be threatened in any way?
So thank you for that. I will say we have been working with our HR department, and since March, we have been communicating with staff. There are certain guidelines that staff members must provide HR, which is personnel matters, whether it's their own physical health or other circumstances in terms of accommodations or leave. We have been working with our Baltimore County Health Department to get as many of our staff members a part of the vaccination. We were fortunate to have the first or second week in January, we had a group of staff members. And when we say staff, we have to think beyond just the teachers. We have to think about anybody who's coming in contact with students. So we have to expand that to say teachers, paraeducators, bus drivers, cafeteria workers, so the list grows. So with our phase-in model, as we're looking at our 4 public separate day schools, our younger students, we're phasing in those students and we're phasing in those staff members to be a part of the link. So once we hear from the health department in terms of how many vaccines we can have access to, we share that with our staff. there was a question earlier. We can't mandate the vaccines, but when we did a quick survey of our staff, about 11,000 staff members responded, and 80% of them were in favor of getting the vaccines. It's just now encouraging our health departments and others to get more vaccines. In terms of retribution, there's no, at this point, we are at a stage of trying to open up school, build schedules for our students, and bring in staff. We encourage our staff to always work with HR to look at those mitigating issues, any health issues. We have offices and divisions that focus on that. And so our staff members have been contacting. At this point, we're just trying to open school and get as many staff as possible. We have not laid off anyone during the initial pandemic. I know that has occurred in other districts. We've kept people busy. Like in my report, I talked about transportation and food services working together. So we will continue to work with our staff and look at as many options as possible. But in order to bring back students, we're going to have staff, and those staff members have always been encouraged to work with HR, our Human Resources Department. Thank you.
Delegate Hill.
Thank you. Come on, trying to get this thing. So real quick, again, and on our we have some very crowded schools. And as you said, the vaccine, the governor claims it's not important for reopening. And in this case, it pretty much is, but it's not available in enough numbers to meet the deadlines that you guys are approaching. So in particularly our crowded schools, what is the plan for achieving adequate distancing, not simply between the educators and staff and the students, but the educators and staff and one another, and making sure there's adequate air exchange?
So since the fall, we have used the CDC guidelines and actually the guidelines from the Maryland Health Department and MSDE to map out the signage, the square footage, not only with our classrooms, but also our buses in terms of distance. The mitigation strategies to say folks have to wear a mask, they have to keep their distance, the whole fact of social distancing, hand washing. And so when we look at our metrics for the county, we're seeing a steady decline in the positivity rate. It's a little less than 5%, although the 15 cases per 1,000 is still above. But based on what we were using back in the fall, it would say that we could still proceed with small groups. But we have looked at we're looking at every school to make sure every school leader understands the mitigation strategies and those things that need to be put in place. In addition, every school principal is looking at their specific plan and mapping that out, because as you know, all of our schools are different in how they have been constructed. So specifically looking at plans and based on the feedback, parents still have the option to continue virtual learning. We will not have 100% of our students returning. So therefore we will have a smaller group of students coming in. We space them out. Cohort A will come a certain number of days a week. Cohort B will come another certain days a week. So we have figured out how to manage the numbers to keep the spacing. And then to remind our staff, usually hot spots for those who've been in a school are usually the staff lounge. Those things have been cut off. So we're not encouraging congregation of staff in those places, but staff will have rooms, and for staff that share rooms, we will have to have the distancing involved or look at other configurations for staff members. So thank you.
So when a school says that they can't meet those metrics, what is your plan for schools who are coming back to you and saying we're not able to do that, the distancing that we need, we don't have the space even with alternative days? What are you doing for those schools?
Well, we're not at that point. That data has not come back that they cannot meet the spacing and the distance, but the buildings are big enough, believe it or not, that every teacher has his or her own classroom. In some cases, they may have shared We would then use alternative spaces. Like I mentioned, the staff lounge may become a workspace for some staff. An office will continue to be a workspace, and making sure that we have the distance and the spacing so we're not commingling staff. We're being very creative in the spaces that we have. Thank you.
Folks, it is 9:30. I know there were some folks that texted a few questions. I know that Vice Chair Brooks has some. I know that we all have some place to be at 9:30. Dr. Williams, I want to thank you for presenting to us. It's been a short period of time. If it's okay with you, I think we'll submit a letter with some questions that you can respond back to us with.
Sure, I'll be happy to. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you all so much for this time.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. All right.